Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the webinar. Today we're going to talk about Redbird Pro. It's a new product for us. We're really excited. And I want to give us a lot of time to have questions and answers. So the first sort of programming note, make sure you type your questions into the chat box. I'll be able to see them and I'll answer them kind of as they come in. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Josh Harnagel. I'm the VP of Marketing for Redbird. I'm also a CFI, a CFII, and an MEI, and I have a bunch of experience learning to fly or teaching people how to fly in Redbird simulators. But most recently, I have a lot of experience in being rusty because I got 2 kids and a job and I don't get to fly very much. And needing to use a tool to help me maintain my proficiency. And so that's kind of where the idea of Redbird Pro started from, was there's a clear need for what's next, what do we do day in, day out to stay proficient pilots. And that's really what Redbird Pro is designed to do. So one of the first things to really talk about or think about is this is for pilots that already have a license or are already flying that are either desiring to improve their skills or maintain their skills. If you're a new pilot or you're working on an instrument rating or your private pilot's license, we do have products for that. It's called Redbird Gift. I'm happy to talk to you about that at any point. But this specific product, Redbird Pro, is really for existing pilots to maintain their currency, improve their currency over time. So that's what the product is. And now let's talk a little bit about what the sort of the components are of it. I'll give you kind of an overview of what's going on and maybe a little bit of background information about why we created it, some of the thinking that's happening behind it, and sort of where we're going. Hopefully it's a pretty straightforward thing. There's a lot happening here, but I'm going to try to explain it in a way that's easy to understand. So I do have a version of the app on my screen here, and it's made up of a couple of real kind of big components. The first thing you'll notice is what we call, it doesn't show up, what we call the Pro Score, which is right here in this box. The idea here is this is how proficient you are as a pilot across 7, 8, or 9 different component scores, areas of flying like decision making, instrument approach procedures, or recency and frequency, a whole range of stuff, and we'll dive into the details of it, but this is just to give you a snapshot. And one of the main things to remember about the Pro Score is it's always relative. It's from where you were 30 days ago to where you are now. You can be, your score will go up, will go down. You'll notice my score is decaying because I'm not flying as much as I should be. Even though I built an app just for this problem, I still have this problem. So that's our first item on the dashboard here is our Pro Score. The next thing we're looking at down from that is a reading list. And this goes into the idea that flying, the skill of being a pilot, is a combination of both application, physical skills, application of procedures, knowledge, that kind of thing, as well as book knowledge, an understanding of the principles of flight, an understanding of the rules that we have to follow while we're in the air, and an understanding of the way we process information and make judgments about risk. So we have a bunch of articles, a series of articles that are in Redbird Pro and are updated all the time that have that talk about things that a pilot should know. So, for example, the top 3 articles on my dashboard here, we have 12 steps to understanding weather, logging, and we have something about what does a proficient pilot look like, all designed to help me become a more proficient pilot on the knowledge front. On the right-hand side of the screen, here we have our training tasks. So these are things that we need to do, I need to do in the simulator to improve my score. So this list and our reading list are actually custom made. They're a training plan when they're combined together. Where what we're doing is we're taking where you are as a pilot, looking at your Pro Score, the areas you're weakest in, and the areas that you're showing some declining scores potentially, and we're providing you content and training to improve those scores. So we focus on your weakest areas. One of the things to remember about this, to think about when you look at the training tasks in the reading list, is it's actually like if you took the Amazon product recommendation engine, where Amazon looks at what you buy, what other people like you buy, and it recommends products. Well, we do the same thing. We're doing the same math to recommend things that you need to do. So it's sort of like the reverse of Amazon. Instead of what you want, it's what you need. And so we have our training tasks. These tasks are, right now, they're all simulator stuff. Eventually, there'll actually be some real airplane training tasks that'll be inserted in there. But for now, it's all simulator things. There are two different types. There's scenarios and skills. And I know some of the terminology here can get a little confusing, so I want to break it down. Those scenarios are like a flight in a real airplane. They start on the ground or in the air maybe, but they only end in a crash or a landing. That's it. It's about judgment and decision making and pushing your skill sets. That there are other tasks that are what we call skills. So you'll see something like power off stalls, power on stalls here. Those are skill flights. They're really focused on specific flight skills. In this case, power on, power off stalls. They're short, probably only 10 or 15 minutes to do it. And there's no real judgment that's involved. It's not really looking at your ADM. It's just looking purely at your skill set as a pilot. All of these flights, everything on the training tasks, all the scenarios, skills, flights that are inside of the app are graded. So when you get in the simulator, it will watch what you do in the simulator and it will give you a grade at the end. That grade will be fed back into your pro score. It'll be updated and you'll get a new training plan once you've completed a certain part of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at our pro score here. So I clicked on my pro score and now I still have my little spider graph. I can see where I am, sort of baseline, which is where I was 30 days ago, current, which is where I am right now, and objective, which is where the app thinks I should be based on the sort of the goals that I put in. We can also look at it in bar format, which might give you a little bit better idea and see where you're breaking down. One of the important things to know about the pro score is that there is no max. There is no such thing as a perfectly proficient pilot. We don't ever score to a maximum. There's a theoretical value that's sort of what we would consider an average pilot, but we're not going to show where you are on that. Again, this is about your performance relative to where you were 30 days ago. It's about continually getting a little bit better each time. You'll notice I'm not getting better each time. If I look at my component scores, I can actually see all the various areas that I'm graded on and what my change has been over the last 30 days. So the first thing, recency and frequency, this is 20% of my total score. So these are you get a bonus points basically, either on top or taken off of your score. So these are things for flying a bunch in the airplane, or flying in Redbird Pro, flying with an instructor, flying in the airplane, doing things every day. That's going to give you a boost on your recency and frequency. Stick and rudder, we can click on this. We'll get a description of everything we're grading in these areas. And you'll see in the last 30 days, my score has actually gone up 4 points, essentially. 30 days ago, I was at 41.31. My current score is 45, right there. But my objective is 52, so I still have a ways to go. I need to do more flights around my stick and rudder skills. And then we can look things like instrument procedures. That's the big one here for me. I have lost almost 10 points, well, just under 10 points over the last 30 days, so I definitely need to do some instrument procedures. I get pro scores for flying in the simulator, completing a scenario, a skill. I get them for reading an article, taking a quiz, all that kind of stuff. You'll see on the right-hand side here, I have recent activity, and it's broken up by day. This was a recent update. I think it got published yesterday, that sort of combines all of my activity into a single day. And you get, so on the 6th of May, I got a total of 1 point increase by completing these 3 things. So the first one was I read an article, then I took a quiz. I got 100% on it, gave me a little bit of bump in both of them, and then I also took another quiz that gave me a little bump as well. So on that day, I basically read 2 articles, took 1 quiz, and I got a 1 point increase in my total pro score. And you can see where it, gave me a little bit of, I got a little bit of score value increase for my instrument approach procedures. Now, the best way to improve your score is not actually to read articles. Those are minor, small point values, but if you, fly in the simulator, that's going to give you a much bigger increase in your score and value. The other thing to keep in mind, this is a very new app for us, and there's a big runway here. I will go into it a little bit more, but one of the next updates is going to be actually to allow you to log events that are happening inside of the airplane in the real world and have them be brought into your Pro score. Eventually, it's going to be automatic, hopefully, if you're using a digital logbook, but for the time being, it will be coming from manually doing it. So if I go into dashboard, go back to dashboard. Oh, I got a question. Thank you, Will. Can the sim activities be done in a J-velocity? Yes. So Redbird Pro right now works with any of the Redbird simulator lines. So the AATDs, the FMX, MCX, all of that stuff. It'll work with the TD, TD2, and the J and J velocity. You do need to have the most recent version of Navigator, the core software that's installed on the simulator. So if your simulator is a little old, if you're under service agreement, you should be able to get those updates. If you're not, call our support department and see what you need to do to get upgraded to meet the simulator requirements for it. But you do need, I think the minimum version is like Navigator 3.6 something. I think we're at 3.66 or 6.7 right now. But any of the most recent stuff that's come out in the last few months will get you there. So good question. So let's go ahead and look at a flight. The first two, once you sign up, the first two flights that we're going to give you, depending on whether you choose the VFR plan or the IFR plan, and I should mention that there's both a VFR version and an IFR and VFR combined version. When you sign up and you land on the dashboard, we're going to give you a sort of a basic Pro score. We don't know much about you. We don't know how well you're flying, what areas you need to improve on. So the first things we do is we recommend a VFR Baseline Flight and an IFR Baseline Flight, which are the longer flights, but they're sort of like a mini flight review or a mini IPC, where we just, again, get a baseline of where you're at and what you need to work on. So if I go into this IFR Circle to Land, this is actually a scenario. So this is focusing on ADM, instrument approach, and regulations. Okay, so it's going to take me about an hour to complete, and an instrument flight. Oops, that doesn't touch. And my CFI is a wonderful young lady named Magali. So what I have here in this scenario is I have an intro video, an overview that's going to show what I'm expected to do on this flight. It's going to introduce the topic, introduce the subject, but it's not going to give anything away. In most of these scenarios, there's some decision that has to be made. There's either a weather emergency, a sort of something might happen with the airplane, or there's some gotcha. Not all of them, but most of them have that, and so we're not going to give that away. We're trying to set it up so that you can actually make a decision in real time and see the outcome of that decision. So I get a video. This is probably not going to come through very well. Okay, there's no sound. Excellent. But in a normal environment, you would get sound. We get a nice video that shows us what we're going to do on this flight. And then I can go over to my flight tab, and I'll see a description of the flight. I'll see an overview and an objective, basically the lesson plan for the flight. Where I'm starting, what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I can look in and see what the instructor thinks are the keys to success. And we work with these instructors that are not Redbird employees but are familiar with Redbird, and we know well to help develop these scenarios so that you can see like a mixture of instructional techniques and that kind of thing, and really get a good foundation. If there are any reference materials, they'll show up in here as well. So in this case, we have some chart supplements that gives us some information that we might need for this flight. The reason we do that is because as if you own a sim, you probably know this, sometimes the nav data on the sim can be out of date with the real nav data. So anytime we're referencing nav data in the flight, we're going to provide you with the reference material at the time that flight was built. So that way, if it changes in the future and you don't update your sim, you have it available. we're not trying to replace ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot or anything like that. So the idea here would be you would launch the flight with Redbird Pro, you'd get any information you need from this page, but you would use ForeFlight, connect to the sim, use it the way you would normally use it in an airplane, so you're practicing the way you fly. The other item that we did include in here is a checklist. We've gotten a lot of questions about this. We may take it out in a future update just because it gets confusing, but all this is doing is it's giving us a mental reminder of the things we need to check on the simulator before we fly. So it's specific to the simulator in a lot of ways. There may be some things in here that are sort of redundant or don't really fit with a normal checklist, but the idea here is that if you happen to be flying at a sim and you don't have a checklist for it, we have that information available to you in the app to get it set up. So let's say you're not at a sim. Let's say you happen to be at the bank and you're waiting for the banker to come out and talk to you about your, mortgage refinance, and you have 10 minutes to kill. Well, you can still do this. You can watch your overview video, you can read the description, you can kind of get a mental understanding of what's happening in the flight, and then you can do the chair flight. And the chair flight is another video where we're going to have a Redbird employee actually fly the flight in the simulator in real time. So you'll see what happens in the scenario, you'll get kind of an understanding of it, and you'll get to sort of mentally work through that activity. Chair fly, essentially. So that's the main purpose of it, is to allow you to fly without get the experience without having to be at a sim. Once you've completed a flight, there's two other tabs that show up here. One is Debrief, and then one is Review, I think. And the review has got a video on it as well, where the instructor will tell you what happened, what decisions you should have made, that kind of thing. And so we will probably add that review in so you can watch it before you complete the flight, just so people who aren't flying can actually see the review as well. That kind of feedback is really important. So if you have those sorts of things, let us know, and we'll make it better. This app is constantly evolving, constantly developing. So for the sake of sort of how we would do this, if I was actually going to fly it in the sim, I would probably not watch the chair. I keep doing that. I would probably not watch the chair flight video. I would just go to the flight page, read the overview, get prepared to do it, and then I'm going to connect to the sim. So when I do this, there's two things that can happen. One, this iPad is going to look on my local network and see if there's any simulators on that same network that are broadcasting. If there are, it'll pop up a list of all those sims, and we'll be able to just select it and go. In this case, I happen to be purposely on a network that doesn't have any simulators on it. So I have this Connect to Simulator dialog that pops up on the screen. On my sim, I could click on the Connect icon on the home page of the desktop, or of the Navigator desktop, and hit Start Sharing. And it'll pop up a code. In this case, I've written it down. And 2YCCW6, and click Connect. And now I'm going to connect to the simulator. This connection is happening over the air, over the internet. So I am now connected to the simulator. I can click Start Flight, and my flight will actually kick off. If you connect to the simulator on the local network, where it pops up and you're on the same Wi-Fi, that connection is not going through the internet. That is just a local connection. And that's to allow, in a future update, probably pretty soon, the ability to fly completely offline. So that if you happen to be in an environment where you have a local network that is not plugged into the outside world, which in a lot of schools that's the case, you can download the scenario onto your app, walk into the flight school, and launch it there without ever having to be connected to the internet. Now that I'm connected, I can click Start Flight. This is a great thing. It's actually looking at the sim software version, and it's saying that my sim version is out of date. I have 3.6.6. The available version is 3.6.8. This is an optional one, so it's not going to force anything. There's no sort of features in this update that are required for Redbird Pro to run. It's just to let me know. So I can click OK, and it'll go ahead and load that flight up for me. In this case, I'm connected to a TD. I can select whatever I want. So a very weird airplane with retractable gear and constant speed prop, but not high performance. It's going to load the flight. And actually, if my sim was updated to the latest version, I'd even get even more information about the loading process and what's happening. As it loads, and remember, a lot of these sims, they take a little bit of time, especially in this case where we have to go up to the internet, come down and grab it. There it is, it's loaded. I can end my flight now, and we'll go ahead and come back. If I were in a real situation, I would fly, I'd get a score, I'd be able to see my score in the app, and then that score would go right back to my pro score. So that's a scenario. A skill flight is very similar to that, except it's got just a few less details. So we have an overview, we have our flight tab, and there's less that we're doing. This is just a stall, so there's not anything that really needs to be set up. And then we'll get a debrief. In this case, we don't have a debrief because we haven't flown it. So at this point, those are the flights. In the future, we'll be adding in real world flights. So on this list, there'll be a task that'll be, next time you go to the airplane and you have 30 extra minutes, do these things. And then you can log it in the app or log it through ForeFlight and it'll come in. And so we'll get that real world information. Okay, we got a question from Richard. Can a basic ground instructor or advanced ground instructor sign off flight training given to a student in an MCX? Well, you said the word flight training, and it's a ground instructor, so unfortunately, no. A ground instructor is essentially there to provide instruction for an endorsement and passing a written exam. They cannot provide any flight instruction. So there is no, if you're in an MCX and you're receiving flight instruction, it's got to be from a certified flight instructor, CFI. All right, again, if you have questions, type them in. I'll answer them as they come up. The next thing I want to talk about is our resources tab. So let's say you don't want to do the things on your training tasks. You think our algorithm is not very bright and it's giving you a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do. You want to do your own thing. Great. Hit the resources tab and it'll take you to this page where we have all the content that's inside of Redbird Pro. So the first one it takes you to is this fly tab, and we have scenarios and skills. You'll see up at the top here we have fly, read, scenario, skills as our navigation. So these are all of our scenarios. The plan is we release an IFR scenario and a VFR scenario on the first Thursday of the month every month. Last month we actually released 3 scenarios, but going forward it'll probably be about 2 scenarios. So even if you're in Redbird Pro every week, there's going to be new stuff for you to do is the plan. So there's always new information, always new things to do. Some of the scenarios might not really be applicable or might not be that interesting to you, but at least half of them should cover all of the bases for everybody. And one of the things to mention on this content is it's not just us that's doing it. So we don't, every scenario has got a featured instructor, which generally speaking is not a Redbird employee. It's an actual instructor that is operating in the real world that we know and respect, and it's worked with our team to build the content, to build the scenario. We also partner with the Air Safety Institute, Air Safety Institute, to generate scenarios based on those case studies that they've done, the accident case studies that they've done, and we do work with Flying Magazine as well to provide additional supporting content. So the Flying has got a great library, a great archive of pilot proficiency topics, and you'll find a lot of that material in here as well, both in scenario form and in article form as well. So we have our scenarios, which again, these are all focused on aeronautical decision making, start in the air or on the ground, but only end with a crash or a landing. And we have our skill flights. These are, again, more tightly coupled to the specific skill, and they're not named, the name is not obtuse, right? We're going to do crosswind landings and the crosswind landing approach. It's not trying to hide anything from you. If we go to read, we have a bunch of articles, and in this case, there's some of these that I've done. So if you've read an article in the last, or completed a scenario or a skill, done any piece of content in the last 12 months, you'll get this little green check mark in the corner that'll let you know it's already been done. That doesn't mean you can't do it again, and you'll still get points for it, but it's not going to be recommended to you, or it shouldn't be recommended to you very often, and ideally you'd do something else to sort of expand your knowledge. So if I click on, what's one that I can maybe guess the answers to here? So I have what to do if you lose ATC on your flight. So I have an article, I can go through it, great, read the article, I'm good. Now I'm gonna take the quiz, I hit that button, I'm gonna get some points because I said I read the article. We're not a grade school teacher, we're not checking your work on that. We're gonna have to, obviously, and let's take a time out and talk about this. Clearly, if you want to, you can game the score, right? So if for whatever reason you've decided you're gonna just max out your pro score, you could sit here all day and take quizzes and read articles and mark complete without actually reading something, and your score will go up slightly. It's not really doing you a lot of service, but hey, if you wanted to do that, you can, and that's one of the reasons why we don't give you very much credit on the article front. So because those are the only thing that we're not really measuring, we're just trusting that when you say mark complete on an article that you actually read it. So we're not really giving you a lot of credit. You'd have to read a lot of articles to move your pro score up significantly. So with that said, I now have a quiz to take with this one. I'm gonna just, guess here. This might be why my pro score is going down, because I do these demos and I just guess. Okay, so I got a 33 on that. Not great, but I do know when I look at my overview here, it'll tell me that the question is incorrect, and it will also tell me what the correct answer is, right? So we can grade to 100 if we wanted to. If you're super lazy or you're in the middle of a product demo, you can just hit mark complete and that score will get accepted. And now, when I go back to my pro score page, I get a little quiz submitted down here. And if I go back to my pro score page, it'll show up in recent activities for today, and I got 7/10 of a point. The quiz, I only got 2/10 of a point for that quiz because I only got a 33% on it, and I got a little combined 5/10 of a point for reading the article. Small value, but nonetheless it helps. Okay. So, does anybody have, I'm going to take just a quick pause here. We're about 30 minutes in. Does anybody have any questions? Anything come up? Nothing? Ethan, you good? Okay. All right. So, let's go to the settings. Right now, there's not a lot happening in the settings. First, let's do this. Let's disconnect. That's how you disconnect from a simulator. You just push the button, connect, disconnect, straightforward. When you sign up now, we only ask you a couple of questions. We don't make you fill out your full pilot profile. But if you want to, you can go in and click on your pilot profile and see what you have or what you've selected. At this point, I think when you sign up, you're just going to have to select your certificates and your ratings. The rest of these numbers won't be filled in. So if you want to, it'll help us give a better score and better training plan to go ahead and fill out all the different fields. It's not that much. It's pretty straightforward. You can also do the same thing for your personal information, and that's that. So let's talk about the subscriptions. So there are two different subscription types. Both of them are monthly, automatically renewing subscriptions. When you download the app and you sign up, you'll get a 30-day free trial for both of them. One of them is VFR only, and it's $15.99. The other is VFR and IFR together, and that's $19.99. They renew on the month, every month, and it's done through the Apple Store. So you'll notice that you can't, when you click on subscription, you can't change it here. I would really like for you to be able to change it here. It would be my preference for you to be able to change it here, but Apple will not allow that. So, and Google is the same way. We, as the developer, cannot make any modifications to your subscription through code. You have to do it yourself. And so this is not my iPad, so I'm not going to do this, but the way to do it would be to go to Settings, search for subscriptions, and then it'll show up in there under subscriptions, and you can click essentially cancel, which all it will do is it will prevent you from renewing at the end of your 30-day trial or at the end of this current billing cycle. There is not really a good way for us to do refunds at this point. Again, that's kind of a limitation of the App Store, and hopefully it's not that bad of an experience that you didn't demand your $20 back. But if it is, shoot me an email and we'll figure it out. So I think that's the subscription information. We can switch between light and dark theme if that's your jam. And it does actually look at the device settings. So it should, if your device is set up to be in dark mode by default, it should automatically do that. So that is the app. There's a lot happening, but hopefully it's straightforward enough that you can kind of get your feet wet and get into it and start to understand what's going on. The goal, again, is really to help you as a pilot get better than where you were 30 days ago. We're not grading to an ACS. We're not grading to the official FAA standards. There's no intent to do that. It's just on where you were 30 days ago and what you need to do to improve. So briefly, let's talk a little bit about where I'd like the app to go over the next 12 months or so. I think the main thing, the two biggest things that we have that we're currently working on is offline usage, so you can download scenarios to the app itself, take them into a flight school that doesn't have an internet connection, launch them there, get the score, take your app home, connect to the internet, and have your score be synced with the cloud in your account. So the offline usage, and then logging real-world events and recommending real-world flight patterns. So the first step in the logging is going to be manual. So there'll be a button over here on the dashboard or on the panel side that will, the menu side here, that will say log event. You'll click that. It'll pull up a form. You can manually enter it. It can be a training event, like an airplane training event. You go flying in an airplane, or it could be a FAST team meeting or an IMC clubs, VMC clubs meeting. You'll get credit for all of those stuff and all that stuff. It's going to be self-reported at first as well. And then the next step of that logging of real-world events will be connecting to your digital logbook. If you use ForeFlight, or even better, if you use CloudAhoy, we'll connect to your account with those providers and automatically pull in the data that they provide to us. So ForeFlight will provide the fact that you flew, maybe if you did some instrument approaches, whatever's in that sort of logbook entry, we'll be able to get. We won't get any performance data. We won't know how well you flew, but we will know that you flew. So we'll be able to give you some points for that. CloudAhoy, on the other hand, if you have a full subscription with them, gives us scoring information, and we'll use that scoring information to actually update your pro score at a really granular level, as though you had flown that flight in a simulator. So there's a lot of advantage there if you're really wanting to track, individual element and task performance over time. Once we're pulling in that real world data, we'll be able to provide flight profiles for you to do in the real world as well. So like I said, on our training task list, there'll be a little block that'll be 30-minute local flight, and it'll say do these landings and steep turns, just to refresh them in the real airplane. You'll go in, you'll click I did this, give yourself a self-graded, self-reported score, and that'll be put into your pro score as well. So those are the two sort of major areas. A little further on from that, I think the biggest push would be opening up the platforms, so it's not just restricted to Redbird hardware, but that's a long way away. So don't buy Redbird Pro right now thinking you're going to use it at home on Microsoft Flight Sim. Maybe we'll be able to do that in the future, but it is not available right now. So I think that's that. Let's talk real briefly about how to get the app, where you can get more information, that kind of thing. So the first thing to get the app is we go to our app store here. Again, this is not my app, so hopefully I don't show anything, Stephen, or not my iPad. So I go to the app store, I search for Redbird Pro, it pops up. I've already installed it, but here it is, nice and handy. I can go look at the app, rate it if you like it, give us a rating, that would be awesome, and download. Right now, I think we published a new version, like I said, on Monday. We publish update around once a month, a major update around once a month. Minor updates may come in a little bit more frequently than that. Okay. And I think, the other thing to mention briefly is that it's available on Android, the Google Play Store as well. I'm not the world's best at Android devices, but it's also here. It's on, let's see, it's loading. It's on Android. We have it for iPads and iPhones. You can get it on your phone as well. You can sign into multiple devices. I'm currently signed into 4 different devices on this table, both Android, iPad, and iPhone. So you should be able to do that. Now, the subscription is tied to your account, though. So it's really tied to you. It's designed for one person to use it, not to be shared. If it is a violation of the terms of service to share it, and because it's scoring things so tightly to you, recommending things for you, there's probably not as much, hopefully there's not as much temptation and as much value in it. Okay, repeat the monthly fee for both VFR and IFR again. Okay, so VFR and IFR are $19.99 a month when purchased through the App Store. The VFR only version is $15.99 a month when purchased through the App Store. So, I think that's that. Do you have any questions? Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. And if you have, redbirdflight.com, and it's on the homepage to learn more, and search in the App Store for Redbird Pro. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.